Welcome to Top 10 Bikes, the show that takes you through the class leaders in the biking world for 2002, as voted for by our specially chosen panel of experts. I'm Dave Lee Travis, and in this week's episode we'll be finding out which street and naked bikes are the leaders in their class for 2002, as voted for by our panel of experts. Let's get down and dirty with the beasts of the streets. The snarling Ducati Monster, the hooligan Suzuki Bandit, and the evil Cagiva Extra Raptor. May the best beast win. Kicking the show off at number 10 is the unusual Moto Guzzi V11 Sport. It's a combination of sound, power and fun. The Guzzi is surprisingly revvy, with low down pull. Open her up to 5,000 RPM and the fun really begins. The engine is unchanged. It's air-cooled pushrod 90-degree V-twin with tractor-like torque and top-end thrum. Definitely a bike you can listen to and enjoy. The Guzzi pulls to the right due to the shaft effect, a nice little quirk. And it produces a very non-standard 91 brake horsepower at 7,800 RPM. The suspension is smooth and well damped for real roads, but it doesn't like big bumps. The long wheelbase and steep head angle means it wallows into slow turns, but other than that it handles fine. The throttle is snappy and crisp. The bike has a different feel to other big twins and is a world away from the Japanese inline fours. The engineers at Guzzi on the banks of Lake Como designed this bike to expand the rider's horizons, and that it does. The V11 covers high miles in the usual long-legged Guzzi fashion. Not everyone's cup of tea, but could be some people's cappuccino. Let's see what our panellists think of the Italian Stallion.
It's a good-looking bike. It's a nice bike, but I think it's the type of machine that Guzzi are marking time with until the new models come in the next sort of year or 18 months.
It's too expensive, and it isn't too anything else that's positive, unfortunately.
A fairly wacky styled bike. It's got lots of throwbacks to retro styling, a big engine, a big V coming out either side of the frame. But to ride it, unless you're really in love with the marque, you'll probably find it a disappointing ride.
So at number 10, our panel of experts have scored the Moto Guzzi at 58%. At number 9, it's the Kawasaki ZR7. Well, where do we begin? Let's start with the engine, taken from the now defunct Zephyr, which stole it from the GT750. The engine is extremely softly tuned and very forgiving. Reliability is also a strong point of this engine, which has been tuned for mid-range oomph, but it's still capable of 130 miles per hour, which is not to be sniffed at. The handling also follows this easygoing theme. The steering geometry is more touring biased than sport, with a 25.5-degree rake and a long, rigid swing arm. It's light and agile and requires very little upper body input when changing direction. Could be one for the ladies. Soft suspension and good low-speed balance all add up to an ideal beginner's bike. There's plenty of low-down grunt, but it's not a bike for track days, although there is a seamless spread of power through the revs. Retailing at just under £5,000, the ZR7 is cheap and cheerful, ideal first bike material. It's not very exciting, but it does everything to an acceptable level. If you want a comfortable, easygoing all-rounder, then the ZR7 is the bike. Don't take my word for it, let's hear from the panel.
The engine performance wasn't very good. The suspension was poor and the looks were uninspiring. I basically bought this bike for transport, to commute to work on. It's never going to be a passionate motorcycle to love and own forever.
Horrible thing. It wallows, it's out-handled by Harley Davidsons. Just don't buy one.
I personally would avoid it. There's much better. You don't necessarily have to spend more money. You just have to shop and think about what you're buying.
So the somewhat bland Kawasaki ZR7 at number 9 scored 60%. In at number 8, it's the BMW R850R. Grab your pipe and slippers. Well, not quite. Producing 70 brake horsepower at 7,000 RPM, this user-friendly shafty is a good all-rounder. The fuel-injected 4-valve twin is torque all the way. The engine pulls well low down and produces plenty of usable power. The R850R is capable of 114 miles an hour, but with no fairing, and that could be a bit much. The unique BMW telelever and paralever suspension with built-in anti-dive do their stuff until pushed hard. When you give it what for, the bike tends to wallow. The 4-pot Brembos have superb stopping power and the 5.5-gallon tank to keep you on the move. The Beamer has a sit-up and beg riding position which is relaxed and comfortable. The adjustable seats allow shorter riders the opportunity to experience the joys of a BMW. The R850R is a good bike for a novice. It's relaxed, it's easy to ride, responsive and stops well. The flat twin also has the benefit of keeping your feet warm. As far as naked bikes go, it has the bare minimum. No tacho, just a speedo and idiot lights. What else could you need? Pipe and slippers perhaps? So, what do our panel think?
Love the Boxer engine, just looks a bit awesome. Tricky nipping in and out of traffic, but it's just a total BMW characteristic. Can't rate it too highly, sadly, because there are some better bikes around, but if you have the pleasure of owning one, it's going to have the BMW badge on it, the propeller, and it's never going to let you down.
You're basically buying a very quality piece of kit. It might not be the most fashionable, but it will always get you there.
The R850, okay, it's not very nice, it's not very pretty, but on the other side, it's shaft drive, it's comfortable, it'll get you to where you want to go.
Our panellists have scored the BMW R850R 70%. Our next contender in our top 10 scored 72%. So, in at number 7 is the Cagiva Extra Raptor, the most evil looking of the street bikes. Taking its name from a nasty dinosaur, the styling says bad boy. It looks like a bike that's evolved. Perhaps it's the missing link. Anyway, missing link or not, the double overhead cam 90-degree V-twin produces 112 brake horsepower at 8,500 RPM and gives you flexible power delivery, guaranteed to get you grinning. The most significant change to this bike is the fully adjustable Mazzagotchi suspension front and rear. The rear shock has also been lengthened, shortening the wheelbase and tightening up the steering geometry, so the Raptor handles as sharp as its styling and name suggest. The Extra Raptor has tons of carbon fibre compared to the V-Raptor, which adds to its muscular and aggressive presence. The Raptor is extremely flickable, and it's capable of putting any self-respecting sports bike to shame. Despite its bad boy styling, it's extremely user-friendly with a roomy riding position, perhaps more of a kitten than a prehistoric predator. The Cagiva Extra Raptor is the most fun you can have with your leathers on. There's the bike, but what do our experts think?
It's one of those bikes, if you want to be different, it's got the TL1000 engine in it, so the engine's going to tick away nicely and do a job for you. The Italians have clothed it with some funky styling. It's just one of those quirky, crazy bikes. You love them or hate them. Actually, to be honest with you, I quite love it.
Reliability is the only question I'd have over this bike. Basically, the performance and the looks and the handling are all superb, but it's a high asking price for a bike that you don't know whether it's going to be there on the button every morning.
The Cagiva scores 72%. Number 6 in our countdown of street naked bikes is the Ducati Monster 900. Miguel Galuzzi is one designer who can honestly say he's created a monster, a Ducati Monster that is. The Monster is the daddy of all street naked bikes. It started the stripped down revival and continues to dominate it. Did you know that the Monster range accounts for 70% of the Ducati factory output? The famous Ducati V-twin sounds as good as ever and handles like it's on rails. Producing 77 brake horsepower at 8,000 RPM, the Ducati Monster 900 has plenty of grunt. The Monster loves a twisty road on a sunny day with a new improved ground clearance, shower front forks and rear ride height adjuster. You can really throw it around with wide bars and low pegs. The Monster is one of the best wheelie machines around. It also has a top speed of 130. This is license-losing material. The Monster is an icon of the 90s. It helped turn Ducati's fortunes around, which is not surprising. It's easy to ride, it's got a sporting personality, capable of all-day curve eating. It's confidence-inspiring and does bring out the devil in you. Like all Ducatis, it looks great, sounds great and handles well. What more do you need to know? Face your demons and play with the Monster. Let's hear from the panel.
It's a very clean, classic design. I think it's Miguel Galuzzi designed the original, and they still look good. They're still, you know, the bike upon which other sort of street bikes are compared to. Timeless, absolutely timeless.
The one thing that always gets me about the Monster is people know you're there. The old dry clutch is rattling away. But having said that, it's Ducati, so there's a lot of street credibility about riding the Ducati badge.
Our panel has scored the Ducati Monster 74%. Now, halfway through our top 10 walk on the wild side, it's time for a break. But don't go away, as we have these animals coming up in part 2. See you after the break. Welcome back to Top 10 Bikes with me, Dave Lee Travis. Today we're stalking through the top 10 street or naked bikes of 2002. Straight in at number 5 is the Suzuki Bandit 600. The Suzuki Bandit is one of those bikes, a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde. Be gentle with it and you can ride sedately through traffic thanks to the low-end power, improved on by the engine mapping system. Treat it mean and you won't be disappointed. The Bandit's revised frame lengthens its wheelbase and enhances its stability. The rake and trail have been reduced, which has made the steering light and responsive. It also boasts a newly designed monoshock, which guarantees a smooth ride. The 600cc inline 4-stroke engine is a sleeved-down version of the GSR 750 with loads of mid-range grunt. It can pop a wheelie at the flick of a wrist. The engine is high-revving, and when kept within its power range, it could tackle any sports bike. The Bandit's chunky good looks give it instant street cred. Considering its chunky looks, it does handle well. It even has undersea storage, enough for a lock and waterproof. That's part of its sensible side. Hooligan material or Mr. Sensible, the Bandit won't disappoint.
Suzuki are onto a good thing. I mean, they built this bike with an old GSX 600 teapot engine motor in it, which, you know, was no great shakes. But when they took away all the fairing and just gave it a nice clean look and made it a real simple bike, it just took off.
The Suzuki Bandit 600 really was the forerunner of a lot of the modern 600 naked bikes we see now. It was low tech, it was cheap. Against the modern competition now, it's out of touch, it's out of flavour. It looks old-fashioned and it doesn't have the performance, but it's still a very good second-hand buy.
For a long time, this was the choice of the budget biker. It isn't very expensive, it's easy to maintain, but it's been superseded.
Our panel of experts gave the Suzuki 76%. In at number 4 on our chart is the lovely SV650. Suzuki really hit the nail on the head with this baby, torquey and responsive as only a V-twin knows how. The SV can only be described as crisp, twist and go. It's ideal for commuting or for mile munching whilst touring. The low seat height makes it a favourite with the ladies and the shorter male population. It's also extremely beginner friendly, being predictable and reliable, whilst also being fairly sporty and fun to ride. The engine positively purrs along. Casual cruising to formal flogging, the SV is happy. It can trickle along in the rush hour madness without as much as a lunge or a hiccup. The aluminium big tube trellis frame makes it stand out from your usual Japanese motorcycles. It's light and rigid and allows you to throw the SV into corners with reckless abandonment. The only change to the SV is the adjustable preload on the forks. The motor is revvy, but with enough grunt to keep up with most bikes throughout the bends. Its handling is superb and well balanced. It'll keep beginners and experienced riders grinning from ear to ear. It's the Tigger of the bike world. It's fun, 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 fun. This is what our panel had to say.
To be honest, it's a sweet little bike, the SV650. It's easy to ride, it's very forgiving, it's just a good value, good all-round package.
The Suzuki SV650 was a revolution when it was introduced. Small capacity V-twin, but so much fun. You get a cheap asking price, cheap insurance, it's user-friendly, there's a low seat height. Everybody can jump on this bike and use it to its maximum. It's not intimidating, it's just an excellent way to have fun on a motorcycle.
So, the Suzuki SV650 charts at 80%. Slotting in at number 3 is the Honda CB600F Hornet. The Honda Hornet is so impressive that it's got its own race series. The naked middleweight has a willing double head cam inline 4 producing 94 brake horsepower at 12,000 RPM. Keen handling and hooligan potential. The engine is based on an early CBR, tuned for more mid-range punch. It likes to be revved hard and really is a screamer at heart. The new 17-inch front wheel peps up the handling, which is already superb. The brakes could do with some work to stop it getting squirrely under hard braking. As the name suggests, the Hornet is a real buzz to ride. Honda has managed to put fat Fireblade tyres onto a little tyke, which does make buying new rubber a tad on the expensive side. That said, it does look good for it. If you really want to get your pulse racing, treat the Hornet to a track day. It'll hold its own against the competition. Just remember though, the Hornet has in itsy bitsy fuel tank only 16 litres. For backroad fun, the Hornet is the way to go. It's a good first bike with a sporty edge. It's back to basics biking. Our panel had this to say.
The Honda CB 600F Hornet is the best route to Hornet ownership. It makes more sense than the 900cc bike because you've got a cheaper asking price, cheaper insurance, cheaper running costs, and it's just a lot more fun to ride. It's the original Hornet and in many people's eyes the best.
Take the early sort of 1996 CBR 600 motor, slap it in a naked chassis, give it a nice little high-rise pipe, and voila, you've got a really nice looking, nice handling bike, and it's got a real clean design to it again.
I've got to like it, and I do. I just think it looks funky enough for Japanese, and it's going to be Honda reliable.
So the Honda CB600F Hornet at number 3 with a score of 82% from our panel of experts. Our top 10 countdown has brought us to number 2. Scoring 83% from our panel is the Honda CB900 Hornet.
The Honda CB900 Hornet was billed as the bike that was going to topple the Phase 1000 from its chrome, but it's failed just a bit short. It's a little bit less lively. The suspension, although it's a bit stiffer, doesn't seem to be as compliant as the Phaser.
Great bike, great price, but perhaps in the class there are better bikes there.
To be honest with you, it's my sort of bike. It's a great bike to ride. It's got a bulletproof engine. It's got Honda build quality, so it deserves to be there.
The Hornet CB900 is the big brother to the Hornet CB600. Weighing in at a reasonable 194 kilos, 25 kilos heavier than the 6, the wider, chunkier 9 boasts excellent low to mid-range torque. The 98 blade motor with camshaft and valve trains modes have seen to this. The biggest and best change is the switch to fuel injection. The Hornet's power delivery is as smooth as a tropical lagoon. It has tons of torque, and it'll pull any gear from idle to red line. Unfortunately, in the name of rideability, the Hornet's power curve has been cut somewhat short. The conservative geometry and soft suspension makes for a comfortable ride with lazy steering. But when you up the ante, the Hornet feels skittish and unstable. The soft suspension is fine for cruising, but grab a handful of the 4 Potts Nissan brakes and you'll guarantee your forks get a workout. Getting your pegs down is all too easy with poor ground clearance thrown in for good measure. All that said, the Hornet is a feel-good bike that you can chuck around with confidence, knowing that it won't bite back. The fine throttle control will allow the wheelie merchants out there to do their stuff with style. Well, before we find out what is the number 1 street naked of 2002, let's run down the top 10 so far from 10 to 2. At 10, the Moto Guzzi V11 Sport. In at number 9, the dull Kawasaki ZR7. The fuddy-duddy R850R is in at number 8. At 7, the Cagiva Extra Raptor. In at 6, the Ducati Monster 900. The grin-inducing Suzuki Bandit 600 takes the number 5 spot. And in at number 4 we find the fun-loving Suzuki Sv 650. At 3, the little Honda 600F Hornet, and its big brother the Honda CB 900 Hornet at number 2. So, what bike has topped our street or naked bikes chart? The number 1 spot goes to the 1000cc Yamaha Fazer, and well deserved it is too. The Yamaha Fazer could be described as the thinking man's R1. The engine is a slightly retuned version of the R1. Its heavier crank and a few other tweaks give the Fazer more low-down oomph, with plenty of top end to spare when the going gets tough. The power output is 143 brake horsepower at 10,000 RPM. The Fazer is 40 horsepower up on the Suzuki Bandit 1200. The engine pickup is smooth, even from 1000 RPM in 6th gear. But for impressive acceleration, keep the revs about 3000 RPM. The handling is more forgiving than a sports bike with softer, longer travel. All that said, it can still give the R1 a run for its money. The factory settings for the suspension are a tad soft, but that can soon be beefed up. Brakes are excellent, best in its class actually. It stops as well as it starts. The sit-up and beg riding position, coupled with the sexy little bikini fairing, add to the bike's overall riding comfort. It's fast, it's fun and furious. Bit costly at over £7,000, but all that grin-inducing grunt is well worth it. The Yamaha Fazer was given 85% by our panel of experts.
The Yamaha Fazer 1000 is my favourite in this category because last year I had a bike which I did 13,000 miles on. I track dayed it, I stunted it, I used it fast on the road. In every one of those 13,000 miles it never missed a beat, it never let me down. It was easy to maintain, it was very easy to ride and it was very practical. What more do you need out of a bike?
This bike is effectively an R1 without the lower fairing. It'll wheelie for England and you can take it on a track, take it down the shops, pretty much do anything you want on it.
It's brilliant. It's got a stonkingly great engine. It looks good enough. It's not cutting edge maybe, but it looks good enough, but it rides beautifully. It's confidence inspiring, so you can go quicker and quicker and quicker. So if you want a bike that's going to give you back something, having spent your money buying it, my number one, the Fazer 1000.
Thank you very much. That's really great. We're very proud to win this. It's added to our tally of awards for this bike this year. It's done extremely well in all sorts of areas. I think it's really recognition of the fact that this is probably the best all-round bike on the market. If you want to do everything from scratch to tour to commute, this is the one that can do it. I think the engine is recognition of a great heritage in the R1, and in this form it really does outperform anything else on the market.
That's our countdown of top 10 street and naked bikes for 2002. And that's it for this week. Do join me, Dave Lee Travis, next week for another round of top 10 bikes of 2002.